Unsung Murder Ballads discusses topics of a disturbing nature.
And we're not going to hold back on the graphic details and disturbing content.
So we do not recommend our podcast for children under the age of 13.
And while we respect the victims and their families involved in these tragic cases,
we're also going to be critical of mistakes that are made during the investigations.
And we're going to use dark humor to express ourselves now and then.
So with that said, this podcast may not be for everyone.
And that's okay. We're glad you're here checking us out.
And if you've made it this far, welcome to the Unsung Murder Ballads family. And follow us on Instagram at Unsung Murder Ballads if you want to talk to us.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Unsung Murder Ballads. This is episode 131. I am Janus Dead.
I'm Jameson Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
All right, so tonight we have our next For Joyous Information episode.
Oh yes,
I love to learn.
Yeah, this one's interesting. And I know we've talked in the past about doing this case, so I'm not going to tell you which one it is until after I do the teaser. And then
I get to guess.
And then you'll get to guess who you think or what you think this person's all about.
That's almost as entertaining as the case.
Yes, I agree. Here we go. The dog wouldn't stop barking outside his home. It was insistent and incessant. It was speaking to him. The dog wasn't just any ordinary animal. Oh no. It was the host to a demon, and it was giving him commands. The dog was owned by Sam, and it was telling him to kill people. And in killing people, he became the son of Sam.
Huh. Wait, the dog was killing people?
No.
The dog is Sam.
No, the dog is the dog is owned by Sam.
The dog is the son of Sam.
No. The dog is the communicator between Sam and the son of Sam.
Heard. Okay. I get you now. Yeah, no, this is weird. I would guess his serial killer name is the son of Sam. That sounds like something.
Yes, I'm sure you've heard that phrase before, I would assume.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
But
yeah, I mean, it sounds like a psychosis. But that's all I got here. I've never heard of this in my life.
Not at all. Okay. All right. That's fair. I'm assuming.
I mean, it sounds like a Stephen King novel, low-key.
You know what? I can totally see that. You're right. I wouldn't
be Cujo vibes.
I wouldn't be surprised if Stephen King took some of his stories from some stuff like this. I mean, he must.
Yeah, I mean, if all of it came purely out of that man's head, then I'd have some concerns.
Yeah, very true.
If those were all original ideas.
Yes, no, I agree. And so, Jameson, you must know some of this, correct?
Correct.
Okay, just making sure. All right, so let's roll into this, especially because I kind of made it hard for you to guess what you thought it was. I realize that now because the dog was a huge curveball.
Now, before we start, I just have to say on a weird note, your tone in the teaser made it feel like it was a campfire story. Like you're like
very much
you're building up the suspense.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, I loved it. It was great.
So I have to say,
Goosebumps novel.
Which is funny because recently I've been listening to a lot of songs by the artist Ren, and he's done a couple really good collaborations, and it's brought out like a creative side in me. And I actually started writing a song again recently. So I've been doing more creative writing, like actual like fictional writing / poetry of sorts, and I realized the difference between journalism, which is kind of what we do here, versus writing fiction, and it's brought out a different creative side to me, so maybe that was part of it. I don't know.
That's awesome. I love it.
But that was definitely fun. I was having fun with the dog. But I wanted to really dive into the dog thing, because, yeah, that's such a fun part of this story.
Oh, yeah, all right. Well, you better start telling me more about this dog.
All right, well, we'll get to the dog eventually, and then you can yell at me for it later.
Awesome, can't wait.
All right, the son of Sam, or as he was also known, the 44 caliber killer, was an American serial killer.
That's a boring name, sorry.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm glad the son of Sam stuck. He committed 8 separate acts of shootings in New York City between July of 1976 and July of 1977.
Damn.
He killed 6 people and wounded 7 others by the end of July in 1977, and he terrorized New York. He eluded the biggest police manhunt in that city's history, and the New York Police Department actually formed a 200-person task force to find him.
That's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. It's New York City. Imagine committing 200 people to finding one man. Fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Now, as all of his early victims had long dark hair, thousands of women in New York went and got their hair cut short or dyed it bright colors, and beauty supply stores had trouble keeping wigs in stock during this time.
He had such a MO for what? Women with long, normal colored hair?
Yeah, long brown hair. So many of his early victims had long brown hair that women were literally changing their appearance. Crazy.
Damn.
Yeah. And again, this is New York.
Too real.
Yeah. So, for so many reasons, the Son of Sam went down in New York history and is still a famous case in the true crime community, which is obviously why we're talking about it here. So his first shooting that's attributed to him occurred in the Pelham Bay neighborhood of the Bronx at about 1:10 a.m. on July 29th, 1976. 18-year-old Donna Lauria, an emergency medical technician, and her friend 19-year-old Jody Valenti, a nurse, were sitting in Jody's car, double parked, discussing their evening out at a disco club, which were all the rave at that time.
Hell yeah.
Donna opened the car door to leave and noticed a man quickly approaching her. She was startled and really annoyed by him, and she literally looked at him and said, "What's this now?" He then produced a gun from a paper bag he was carrying, and he crouched down. He braced one elbow on his knee, he aimed his weapon with both hands, and then he fired.
Oh my God.
Donna was struck by one bullet that killed her instantly. Jody was shot in her thigh, and a third bullet missed them both. The shooter then turned and walked away quickly. Jody survived her injury and reported that she didn't recognize the shooter, but she did describe him as a white male in his 30s. He stood about 5 feet 8 inches tall and weighed about 200 pounds. She said,
"This might be a weird thing to say, but this is feels like rare that one of these killers we talk about has that good of aim."
We'll kind of get into that, but yes, they also don't. I mean, it's weird that he crouched and braced himself to.
I mean, yeah, I'm like, does this guy have police or military training? That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, we'll get into it later, but yes, he has military training. So,
I knew it. I'm so smart.
Yeah, he definitely wanted to make sure his shot was steady. Yeah, which is bizarre for this type of killer. She described his hair as short, dark, and curly in a mod style, like a modern style. For the 70s, probably looked like the guys from Star Wars.
Oh, God.
So this description was repeated by Donna's father, the woman who died, who claimed to have seen a similar man sitting in a yellow compact car parked nearby. Neighbors gave corroborating reports to police that an unfamiliar yellow compact car had been cruising the area for hours before the shooting.
Interesting.
So the interesting thing about this is, again, imagine New York, how much they see every day, how many people are around them. The fact that this yellow compact car stood out says a lot.
Right. That, he must have been doing some real weird behavior, circling in the same block for, hours and hours.
Right. Because, otherwise, in a city that big, you probably wouldn't even, the number of times they must see yellow compact cars probably wouldn't even register unless something weird was happening.
Right. Unless you're, sitting out on your stoop having a cigarette for a little too long. You see a weird yellow car and you're like, huh. And you come out later and you're like, huh. Right.
It's like the scene in the Truman Show where he's like, there's the guy carrying this and there's the woman with the dog. And, he's like, they're on a loop.
Yes.
So on October 23rd, 1976, a similar shooting occurred in a secluded residential area of Flushing in Queens. Carl De Niro, 20, a Citibank security guard, and Rosemary Keenan, 18, a Queens College student, were sitting in Rosemary's parked car when the windows suddenly shattered. Carl later described this as he felt that the car had just exploded.
Ooh.
Rosemary quickly started the car and sped away. And then the panicked couple, as they were leaving, they didn't even realize someone had been shooting at them until they looked down and saw that Carl was bleeding from a bullet wound to his head.
Oh,
Oh my
God.
God.
Now, Rosemary only had superficial injuries from the broken glass, but Carl eventually needed a metal plate to replace a portion of his skull.
Holy shit. The adrenaline that must have been running through his body to not notice that.
Yeah, just be like, oh my
Or
God.
just maybe it just felt like it was the broken glass into him.
Maybe. I mean, after the what was the Bonnie and Clyde case where his brother was missing a whole section of his skull and stayed alive.
Yeah.
Apparently, that's a thing that happens more often than we would have guessed.
Yeah, my medical knowledge has really been updated by this.
Right? Well, neither of them even saw their attacker and couldn't give any descriptions whatsoever. Now,
How do we
police...
know it's related then? I'm sure you'll tell me later.
Yeah, we're going to get to all that. Police determined that the bullets that were embedded in Rosemary's car were .44 caliber rounds, but they were so deformed that they thought it was unlikely they would ever be able to link it to a particular weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because Carl had shoulder-length hair, which was long for the time, police later speculated that maybe the shooter had mistaken him for a woman, because as stated earlier, all of his victims, his early victims, were women with long, dark hair.
Interesting, plausible.
Rosemary's father was a 20-year veteran of the police department in New York, so this obviously meant that there was a massive investigation. But as with the first shooting, there didn't seem to be any tangible motive that police could figure out for these shootings. So police unfortunately made little progress in the case, and it kind of started going cold for a little bit. Now, many of the details regarding both cases were similar, but police didn't initially associate them with each other, partly because the shooting occurred in different boroughs of New York and were being investigated by different police precincts.
Right, and it's not like shootings are like the most rare thing to happen in a city that big.
Exactly.
You can't just connect all of them together.
Right, and they were 3 months apart. So yeah. So shortly after midnight on November 27th, 1976, high school students Donna DeMasi, 16, and Joanna Lamino, 18, had walked home from a movie. They were chatting on the porch of Joanne's home in Floral Park when a man dressed in military fatigues approached them and began to ask them for directions. In a kind of high-pitched voice, he said, "Can you tell me how to get..." And then he suddenly pulled out a gun and started shooting at them.
Oh my God.
He shot each of them once, and as they fell to the ground injured, he fired several more times, one of them missing and striking the house before he ran away. A neighbor heard the gunshots, and he rushed out of his house and saw a blonde man running past, gripping a pistol in his left hand. Donna had been shot in the neck, but her wounds were not life-threatening. Joanne was hit
Even though she was shot in the neck.
in the neck, yeah.
The things we say on this show, some of them I'm like, what the fuck?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, like you obviously have your throat in the center, and then you have your jugular veins on either side, but there's a lot of flesh there for a bullet to go through. Yeah, you
But
can
like also your like jugular vein and your spinal cord.
Yeah. Again, you
there's
have
very, very little room for error there.
Yeah, like you have some areas, but yeah, it's weird. You're right. So Joanne was hit in the back and was hospitalized in serious condition, and she was ultimately rendered paraplegic.
Oh, that's awful.
She's still alive, though.
She is, but she's a teen and is going to spend the rest of her life not living the life she knew prior, all because of a random choice.
Ugh.
At about 12:40 a.m. on January 30th, 1977, Secretary Christine Freund, 26, and her fiancé, bartender John Deal, 30, were sitting in John's car near the Forest Hill Station in Queens preparing to drive to a dance hall after they had just seen the movie Rocky. 3 gunshots penetrated their car. In a panic, John drove away for help, and he had sustained minor superficial injuries, but Christine was shot twice and died several hours later at the hospital.
Ugh.
Neither of them had even seen the attacker.
Tactical.
Well, I mean, you're in New York, you're just sitting in a car, and I mean, unless you're really vigilant and looking all over the place, you won't even see. I mean, you know what I mean?
You usually feel safe in your car. Yeah.
And especially in New York, like, I know it's late at night, but there are still people around.
Right, there's always people around, yeah.
It's just crazy to me. I mean, granted, yeah, we live near Boston, and it's not quite as big, but you never really feel alone, you know?
Right. And I've spent plenty of time in New York. It's not.
I mean,
None of these are circumstances where I would have felt nervous.
Right, and there are definitely areas of New York that can be empty, you know, especially late at night. But I don't know, I just never. I mean, I guess you're right. I never felt unsafe except when shit's going down, and all of a sudden I'm looking around like, okay, I kind of feel unsafe, you know.
Yes.
So police made their first public announcement that the most recent shooting was similar to the earlier shootings, and that the crimes might be connected. So it took them about 6 months to figure this out. All the victims had been shot with .44 caliber bullets, and the shootings seemed to be targeting young women with long dark hair. New York Police Department Sergeant Richard Conlon stated police were leaning towards a connection in these cases. So even then, he's trying to not panic the public. Composite sketches were released of the black-haired suspect that they saw at the first 2 shootings, and then another one with lighter colored hair for the other suspect that had been seen after the 3rd shooting.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not looking for just one person. At about 7:30 p.m. on March 8th, 1977, Columbia University student Virginia Voskurachian, 20, was walking home from school when she was confronted by an armed man. She only lived about a block away from where Christine Freund had been shot.
Oh, wow.
In a desperate move to defend herself, Virginia lifted her school textbooks between herself and the killer, but the bullet passed through the books and shot her.
Whoa.
The bullet struck her head, killing her.
Oh.
Fucking crazy.
That's intense.
In a March 10th, 1977 press conference, NYPD officials and Mayor Abraham Beam declared the same .44 revolver had been fired to kill Donna Loria, the first victim, and Virginia, the most recent victim. Official documents were later brought to the public eye, revealing that while police strongly suspected the same .44 caliber gun had been used in all the shootings, the evidence was actually inconclusive.
What?
Yeah, they're connecting dots because they're there, but they couldn't prove it. So at this point in time, proving it in a court of law would have been difficult.
Right, because like if the bullets get too messed up, you can't tell.
And when they're getting shot into cars and houses, it's hard to get a good slug out of it that you can test.
Mm-hmm.
So these crimes were discussed by the local media pretty much every day, and circulation increased dramatically for the New York Post and the Daily News, both of which were tabloid newspapers that really had a lot of commentaries on things, and they always talked about the graphic nature of crimes. So they were...
And they still do. They're
Yeah.
still junk news sources to this day. Isn't that incredible?
It's so funny to think about that.
Some things never change.
And maybe that's a good thing? I don't know.
Because it's consistent. I mean, it wouldn't be if they couldn't just become reliable. No one would believe them.
That's
They're there to
true.
be that sensationalized crap.
That would be like if the Weekly World News started giving us real news.
Yeah.
Instead of like Bat Boy found in cave, you know?
Yeah.
But it's so entertaining.
It definitely is. And I used to love reading those back in the day, but kind of like The Onion was so funny 20 years ago.
Yes.
And now The Onion's having trouble finding stuff that's satirical because the real world is...
Right.
Real life is just much more horrific.
Fucking joke.
It's like I feel like I'm in a coma and this is all a dream.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Anyway, at about 3 a.m. on April 17th, 1977, Alexander Esau, 20, a tow truck operator, and Valentina Suriani, 18, a Lehman College student, and an aspiring actress and model, were sitting in a car on the Hutchinson River Parkway in the Bronx. They were about a block away from Valentina's home, this is an earlier victim, and only a few blocks away from the scene of the first shooting. A resident of a nearby building heard 4 gunshots and called the police. Valentina, who was sitting in the driver's seat, was shot once and Alexander twice, both of them in the head.
Ugh.
Valentina died at the scene, and Alexander died in the hospital several hours later without being able to describe his attacker.
Ugh. It's always 2 people in a car.
Except for the one girl walking down the street with her school books.
Right.
Yep. Which you got to wonder, I mean, we know they're connected because of the caliber of bullet, but it'd be weird if maybe that one was an offshoot. It wasn't actually related.
Yeah.
So police said the weapon used for the crime was the same one as those that had been used in the earlier shootings. Now, this particular shooting, police discovered a handwritten letter near the bodies. It was written in mostly block capital letters with a few lowercase letters thrown in to be weird, I guess. And it was addressed to the NYPD captain Joseph Borelli. In this letter, the killer identified himself as the son of Sam for the first time.
Mm.
The press had previously dubbed the killer the .44 caliber killer because of his weapon of choice. Now, the letter was initially withheld from the public, but some of its contents were revealed to the press, and the name Son of Sam quickly replaced the old name, obviously.
Makes sense.
Now, the letter expressed the killer's determination to continue his work and taunted police for their fruitless efforts to capture him. Sound familiar? We've heard this a couple times now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not going to read the entire letter, but here are some excerpts. I am the son of Sam. I am a little brat. When Father Sam gets drunk, he gets mean. He beats his family. Go out and kill, commands Father Sam. To stop me, you must kill me. Attention all police. Shoot me first. Shoot to kill or else. I am the monster, Beelzebub, the chubby behemoth. I love to hunt, prowling the streets looking for fair game, tasty meat. The women of Queens are the prettiest of all. Literally not the prettiest, it's the letter Z. The women of Queens are the prettiest of all. I don't want to kill anyone, no sir, no more, but I must. Honor thy father. Police, let me haunt you with these words. I'll be back. Yours in murder. And that's
Ew,
and
that's fucking bizarre.
And those are just excerpts. Like, this thing was long.
I was going to say, I don't remember how long it is, but if that's just excerpts, holy crud.
Yeah, I just went for the parts that were, like, he repeats himself a lot. It's a lot of BS.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a fucked up letter. So obviously the killer's
It's fucked.
Yes, it is. Obviously, the killer's unusual attitude towards the police and media received widespread scrutiny. Psychologists have observed that many serial killers gain gratification by eluding pursuers and observers because that feeling of control over media and law enforcement and even the entire population provides a source of social power for them.
Mm-hmm.
After consulting with several psychiatrists, police released a psychological profile on their suspect on May 26, 1977. He was described as a neurotic who probably had paranoid schizophrenia and believed himself to be a victim of demonic possession. Now,
sounds about right.
Which is funny because I was like, how did they even get to that? Again, maybe it was some things in the segment, the letter, that I didn't really read out loud, but bizarre that they came to that conclusion.
Yeah, it's a bit of a stretch to make anything like that when you haven't actually spoken to someone, but
the FBI do a really good job of narrowing down these like their profiles are pretty spot on most of the time.
Yeah.
So on May 30th, 1977, Daily News columnist Jimmy Breslin received a handwritten letter from someone who claimed to be the .44 caliber killer.
Hmm.
The letter was postmarked earlier that same day in New Jersey. So apparently,
That's weird.
I know, mail moved much faster back then or something. That's crazy.
My goodness.
On the reverse side of the envelope, neatly hand-printed in 4 precisely centered lines, were the words, blood and family, darkness and death, absolute depravity, .44. The letter inside read, in part, and this is a bit longer, so bear with me. Hello from the gutters of NYC, which are filled with dog manure, vomit, stale wine, urine, and blood. Hello from the sewers of NYC, which swallow up these delicacies when they are washed away by the sweeper trucks. You can forget about me if you like, because I don't care for publicity. However, you must not forget Donna Loria, and you cannot let the people forget her either. She was a very, very sweet girl, but Sam's a thirsty lad, and he won't let me stop killing until he gets his fill of blood. Here are some names to help you along. Forward them to the inspector for use. The Duke of Death, the Wicked King Wicker, the 22 Disciples of Hell, John Wheaties, rapist and suffocator of young girls.
Oh, dear God.
What the shit is going on here?
He's offering alternate names to the son of Sam.
Oh, okay.
John Wheaties, rapist and suffocator of girls, is fucking bizarre.
Yeah, that's
that
the one
one,
that caught my attention. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Feels like a parody.
And then he finishes with, upon my capture, I promise to buy all the guys working the case a new pair of shoes if I can get up the money. Son of Sam.
Weird as
Okay.
fuck.
Now, underneath the Son of Sam was a logo or sketch that combined several symbols. And this is sort of famous if you ever look up the case online. I'm basically going to describe what it is to you right now, though. It's an X, and within the X itself, in the top portion of the X is a cross. In the bottom portion is an S, and on the right and left is the male and female symbols, with the plus sign that would normally be on the female symbol stretched down to look like an inverted cross. And that sort of became like the symbol of the Son of Sam.
Huh. I'm looking it up right now because I was like, I need to look at this.
Yeah, type
That's
up
weird.
Son of Sam symbol.
It is giving schizophrenia.
Now, Breslin notified police who thought the letter was probably from someone with knowledge of the shootings. Breslin's letter was sophisticated in its wording and presentation, especially when compared to the crudely written first letter, and police suspected it might have been created in an art studio or similar professional location by someone with expertise in printing, calligraphy, or graphic design.
I fucking hate people who fake shit like this.
I was going to say, and there's a lot of speculation that that second letter is a hoax because it's not close enough to the first one, which seemed more likely. Yeah.
Fuck you for doing this. Just like, fuck you.
Yeah, wasting time and money of people. Yeah. So the unusual writing caused police to speculate whether or not the killer might have had a job as a comic book letterer. And they actually went and reached out to staff members at DC Comics to see if they recognized the lettering.
That's actually kind of wild.
That's
Wow.
blew me away. I was like, hell yeah. And the phrase Wicked King Wicker, they thought might have been a reference to the film The Wicker Man, which was originally released in 1973 and later remade with Nicolas Cage, which became one of the funniest internet like meme joke things I've ever seen. The whole not the bees. Yeah, it's so stupid. The Daily News published the letter a week later after they agreed with police that they would withhold portions of the text. And Breslin, the writer he sent the letter to, urged the killer to surrender. Now, the dramatic article made that day's paper for the Daily News their highest selling edition to date,
Wow.
selling more than 1.1 million copies.
Holy shit.
That's crazy. Now, police received thousands of tips based on references in the publicized portion of the letter, but all of those proved useless.
Great.
As previously stated, all of the shooting victims had long dark hair, so at this point, thousands of women in New York were getting their hair cut and dyeing them, and beauty supply stores were running out of wigs, which I can't even imagine happening.
Yeah, that's actually nuts.
Then, on June 26, 1977, Salvatore Lupo, 20, a mechanic's helper, and Judy Placido, 17, a recent high school graduate, had left the Elphis Disco Club in Bayside, Queens, and were sitting in Salvatore's parked car at about 3 a.m. when 3 gunshots blasted through the vehicle. Salvatore was wounded in his right forearm, while Judy was shot in her right temple, her shoulder, and the back of her neck.
Oof.
Both of them survived.
What?
Wow.
I know. The human body.
In her... yeah. What? Every time, man, you kill me.
It's not like I'm making this up. Like,
no, I know, but it's like truth is stranger than fiction.
I agree. I would never have thought it possible. Salvatore told police that they had been discussing the Son of Sam case only moments before they were shot.
Whoa.
Which again makes sense. You're sitting there going, man, we're prime victim material right here.
Like, haha, would it be so weird?
And then bang, bang, bang. Yeah, fuck that. Neither of them had seen their attacker, but 2 witnesses reported a tall, dark-haired man in a leisure suit fleeing from the area. One claimed to see him leave in a car and even supplied a partial license plate number. Now, with the first anniversary of that initial shooting approaching, police started to establish a sizable dragnet that focused on the past hunting grounds in Queens and the Bronx. So they were getting ready. They were patrolling. They thought maybe that date had significance. However, the next and final .44 caliber shooting occurred in Brooklyn. Early on the 31st of July, 1977, Secretary Stacy Moskowitz and clothing salesman Robert Violante, both 20, were sitting in Robert's car, which was parked under a streetlight near the city park in Bath Beach, on their first date. What a shitty first date, exactly.
For real.
They were kissing when a man approached within 3 feet of the passenger side of the car and fired 4 rounds, striking both of them in the head before he escaped into the park. Robert lost his left eye.
Oh.
And Stacy, who was the only blonde victim, died of her injuries.
Oh.
That night, Detective John Falatico was awakened at his home and told to report to the 10th Homicide Division at the 60th Precinct Office in Coney Island. He was given 2 weeks to work Stacy and Robert's case as a normal murder investigation, and if he could not solve it in that time frame, the case would be handed to the Son of Sam task force.
Oh God.
Now, in another one of those, if I saw this in a movie, I wouldn't believe it moments.
Ooh, I love these.
Yeah, this one's weird. Local resident Cecilia Davis was walking her dog at the scene of the last shooting when she saw a patrol officer, Michael Catanillo, ticketing a car that was parked near a fire hydrant. Moments after seeing the police officer, a young man walked past her from the area where the car was, and he seemed to be looking her up and down, kind of showing her a little too much interest. Cecilia felt concerned because he was holding a dark object in his hand, so she ran into her home and then moments later heard gunshots from behind her house.
Oh my God.
So she initially remained quiet about this experience for about 4 days, and then she finally contacted police, telling them that she thought, just maybe, The shooter might have been the driver of the car that police officer had ticketed that night. When police closely checked every car that had been ticketed in that area, sure enough, a yellow 1970 Ford Galaxy was among the cars that they investigated. It blows my mind that a parking ticket catches a serial killer.
You know, something's gotta...
It's always the weirdest stuff, too.
Yep. On August 9th, 1977, NYPD Detective James Justice, awesome name for a cop, by the way.
Right?
True.
That's incredible.
Although his is spelled with an I-S, not an I-C-E, but still, James Justice.
Still great.
Telephoned the Yonkers Police Department to ask them to schedule an interview with the owner of that car. The owner of that car was named David Berkowitz. The Yonkers police dispatcher who first took James's call was a woman named, and I kid you not, Wheat Carr.
I'm sorry, what?
Her name is Wheat, like rye and wheat. Yeah.
Oh,
There's
wow.
a lot of things in this case that I'm like, you're lying to me. I wouldn't believe a movie about this.
I'm not. Her name was Wheat.
Yeah, Mr. Justice is talking to Mrs. Wheat. Okay. And the candlestick in the ballroom. Okay,
Right?
sure.
I swear to God, this is all real life. It'd be funny if I was joking, but no, I'm not. As soon as James mentioned the name David Berkowitz to her, she said, "Let me tell you about him. I know him. He lives right behind me." She proceeds to inform James that Berkowitz had shot and wounded her family's black Labrador retriever named Harvey.
What the fuck?
Harvey was owned by her father, and his name was Sam.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Fucking crazy.
Oh.
Your reaction is so amazing right now.
I'm gagged.
It makes me wish I could see your face. Oh, man. When James heard the name Sam, he had a very good feeling that Berkowitz was the real culprit they had been looking for. James asked Yonkers police for some help tracking him down, and according to Mike Novotny, a Yonkers police sergeant, the department had their own suspicions about Berkowitz in connection to strange crimes in their jurisdiction.
Very interesting.
Yonkers investigators told James Justice that Berkowitz might actually be the son of Sam. The following day, on August 10th, 1977, police investigated Berkowitz's car, which was parked on a public street, and it was parked outside his apartment building at 35 Pine Street in Yonkers. They saw a gun out in the open on his back seat.
Well,
Yep, there you go. Probable cause. So they searched the car.
Yep.
They searched the car and found a duffel bag filled with ammunition, maps of the crime scenes, and a threatening letter addressed to Inspector Timothy Dowd of the Son of Sam Task Force.
well, there's a smoking gun.
How confident must you be that you're never going to get caught to leave that shit unattended?
Everything there.
Just
Yeah.
out in the open. Incredible.
Crazy. Police decided to wait for Berkowitz to leave the apartment rather than risk a violent confrontation in the building's narrow hallway. They also were waiting to obtain a search warrant for his apartment because they were worried that their search might be challenged in court if they didn't get one.
Mm-hmm.
The initial search of the vehicles was based on the handgun being out in the open, so they had complete legal authority to go in there, as we just stated, even though it was not illegal to own a gun like that in New York, and that didn't require any special permits, at least at the time.
Interesting.
The warrant they were asking for still had not arrived when Berkowitz exited his apartment building around 10 p.m. and got into his car. Detective John Falatico approached the driver's side of his car and pointed his gun close to Berkowitz's temple, while Detective Sergeant William Gardella pointed his gun at him from the passenger side. Berkowitz was carrying a paper bag that contained a .44 caliber revolver, the type identified in ballistics test.
You don't say.
Yep. And that was, right there next to him in the car. There it was. Berkowitz then flatly stated, "Well, you got me."
Wow.
And Detective Felitico said to him, "Now that I've got you, who have I got?" And Berkowitz said in a soft, almost sweet voice, "You know." To which,
My God.
to which the cop said, "No, I don't. You tell me." And Berkowitz turned his head to him and said, "I'm Sam." So, yeah.
Oh.
And he said, "You're Sam? Sam who?" And he said, "Sam, David Berkowitz." At which point, they arrested him.
Yeah, that's enough.
Yeah, you don't need to go any further. I think he was hoping for Son of Sam, but you take what you can
He
get.
wanted him to say it.
Right. And I'm like, since when do you need that much information to arrest people? People get arrested for fucking nothing.
I know. I'm surprised they didn't just pull him out of the car and throw him to the ground and didn't even give him a chance to talk. That's how it would happen today.
Literally.
Police searched Berkowitz's apartment and found it in disarray with satanic graffiti on the walls. Again, this goes back to why we had satanic panic back in the day.
Yep. Totally.
They also found diaries he had kept since he was 21 years old. 3 stenographers' notebook nearly completely full, with Berkowitz meticulously noting hundreds of fires throughout New York City.
Weird behavior.
Well, Berkowitz himself confessed that he was the person known as the Phantom of the Bronx, which was a previously unidentified individual responsible for more than 2,000 arsons committed in the city throughout the 70s.
2,000 arsons?
Can you even imagine?
What a band name, first of all. Second of all, what the fuck?
Actually, you know what? You're right. That's a great band name. So, who the hell is David Berkowitz? Let's dive in.
Please, do tell.
David Berkowitz was born Richard David Falco on June 1st, 1953, in Brooklyn in New York City. Within a few days of his birth, his biological mother, Elizabeth Betty Broder, gave him up. Just gave him away. Broder herself had grown up as part of an impoverished family and was working as a waitress. In 1936, she had married a man named Tony Falco, who was an Italian-American. The marriage lasted less than 4 years. Falco left her for another woman. But Falco isn't his father. Berkowitz's biological father was a man named Joseph Kleinman, who was a married businessman. So he obviously didn't want anything to do with him. Now the infant,
No surprise.
the infant Richard, was adopted by Pearl and Nathan Berkowitz of Bronx. Now, the couple were Jewish and they owned a hardware store. And they lived in modest means and, they were childless in middle age. When they adopted him, they did, I don't know why they did this, but they decided to reverse his name. So instead of being Richard David, they turned it into David Richard. And then they gave him their last name. So he became David Richard Berkowitz.
Interesting.
Yeah, strange. But maybe they liked David better. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, David is a Jewish name.
That's true.
It's in the Bible.
So Berkowitz was frequently bullied for being Jewish, and in fact his biological father was Jewish. Journalist John Vincent Sanders wrote that Berkowitz's childhood was somewhat troubled, quote unquote. Although he was above average in intelligence, he lost interest in education at an early age and became infatuated with larceny and starting fires. Surprise.
Yeah.
He supposedly also suffered some head injuries when he was a child. Now,
Ooh, that does not help.
Neighbors and relatives recalled that Berkowitz was difficult, spoiled, and a bully. His adopted parents consulted at least one psychotherapist due to his misconduct, but his misbehavior never resulted in any legal intervention or serious mention in any of his records, school or criminal. Berkowitz's adopted mother died of breast cancer when he was 14, and his home life became strained in later years, particularly because he didn't like his adoptive father's second wife.
Oh, that's fucking tough.
So Berkowitz lived with his father while he attended high school. He graduated in 1971. In 1971, at the age of 17, Berkowitz joined the Army and served at Fort Knox in the U.S. and with an infantry division in South Korea.
Oh, shit.
After he was honorably discharged in June of 1974, he located his birth mother, Betty. After a few visits...
That's really hard to do.
Yeah, I can't imagine, especially back
Especially
then.
pre-internet?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
This is 1974. This is the year I was born. Jesus, that was so long ago.
Yeah.
So after a few visits with her, she told him the details of his birth, and this news greatly disturbed him. And he was particularly distraught at the array of reluctant father figures in his life.
That is fucking sad.
Yeah. Forensic anthropologist Elliot Layton described Berkowitz's discovery of his birth details as the primary crisis of his life, a revelation that shattered his sense of identity, which may or may not be true. I don't know much about it.
Mm-hmm.
His communication with his birth mother later lapsed, but for a time he did remain in communication with his adoptive sister, Rosalind. Berkowitz attended Bronx Community College for 1 year, enrolling in the spring of 1975. In 1976, he went to work as a cab driver for the Co-op City Taxi Company. He subsequently had several non-professional jobs, and at the time of his arrest, he was working as a letter sorter for the U.S. Postal Service. And it was during the mid-70s. Yeah, I mean, it's just weird, but I don't know. I guess I can't judge too much. I've changed jobs a number of times throughout my life, but they're all roughly in the same field. He seems to be all over the place.
Which is, I guess, normal for a young adult.
So during the mid-70s, Berkowitz began committing violent crimes. He actually bungled his first attempt to murder someone because when he was 22, he attacked someone on Christmas Eve, and he used a hunting knife to stab 2 women. The first alleged victim was a Hispanic woman who was never identified by police, but the second woman was 15-year-old Michelle Foreman, a sophomore at Truman High School, who he stabbed 6 times on a bridge and whose injuries were serious enough that she was hospitalized for a week.
Ugh.
Now, Berkowitz wasn't even a suspect in this crime, and he soon relocated to his apartment in Yonkers to avoid any kind of, probably bumping into these girls, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So after failing to kill someone with a knife, he then switched to the handgun and began his crime spree as the son of Sam. Berkowitz exhibited an enduring enjoyment of his activities, oftentimes returning to the scene of his crimes, which in New York must be super easy to do, let's be honest.
Right.
Yeah, most definitely.
Soon after Berkowitz's arrest, the address of his apartment building was legally changed from 35 Pine Street to 42 Pine Street in an attempt to end its notoriety and kind of keep like weird people from coming and looking. You know what I mean? Like those morbid tourists.
I guess pre-internet, not everyone would know that it had been changed.
Right. They probably thought, oh, they must have destroyed the building or something. Right.
Right. Oh, wait, 35 to 42, but it was still on the same side of the street?
Yeah. Well, again, I don't know how New York does things, but you're right. That would sound weird. Yeah, I don't know.
Guess I'll have to go.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go. So
Field trip.
Berkowitz was briefly held at a Yonkers police station before being transported directly to the 60th Precinct in Coney Island, where the Son of Sam task force was located. At about 1 a.m., Mayor Beam arrived to see the suspect personally. After a brief, wordless encounter, the mayor then went out and announced to the media, the people of the city of New York can rest easy because of the fact that police have captured a man whom they believe to be the Son of Sam. Weird that he had to see him and not say anything to him. I don't know. That was weird to me.
Yeah.
He just probably wanted to stare him down and see, what the sicko looked like in person.
Yeah, get a gauge on him. Yeah, that's just, it's weird. Berkowitz was interrogated for 30 minutes in the early morning of August 11th, 1977, which to me doesn't sound like a very long time to interrogate somebody.
No, not at all.
He quickly confessed to the shootings and expressed an interest in pleading guilty. The investigation was led by John Keenan, who took his confession. During questioning, Berkowitz claimed his neighbor's dog was the one reason he started killing, stating that the dog demanded the blood of pretty young girls. He said that Sam, which was mentioned in his first letter, was his former neighbor's Sam Carr's dog named Harvey, a black Labrador who was possessed by an ancient demon and issued irresistible commands that Berkowitz couldn't resist, that he had to kill people.
Crazy.
I can't even get over that. A few weeks after his capture, Berkowitz was permitted to communicate with the press, which doesn't make any sense to me at all.
No.
In a letter to the New York Post dated September 19th, 1977, he alluded to his original story of demonic possession, but closed with a warning interpreted by some investigators to be an admission of criminal accomplices. He said, quote, "There are other sons out there. God help the world," unquote.
Well, that's ominous.
That's ominous, but also it does just sound like, yeah, sure there are, and Sam's totally real, and...
Except that witnesses described very different looking people at 3 different crime scenes.
That is true.
At a press conference in 1979, Berkowitz declared his previous claims of demonic possession were a hoax.
What?
Berkowitz later stated in a series of meetings with a special court-appointed psychiatrist, David Abrahamson, that he had long contemplated murder to get revenge on a world he felt had rejected and hurt him. Berkowitz told investigators that he was planning to end his spree by going down in a blaze of glory at a nightclub. 3 separate mental...
Thank God they stopped him first.
Can you imagine a fucking nightclub? I mean, you'd need an automatic weapon to kill more than like a handful of people at a nightclub.
I mean, and we've seen it happen in recent years, right?
Yeah, but usually they have automatic weapons, right? So, yeah. But again, it would depend on how he did it. So 3 separate mental health examinations determined Berkowitz was competent enough to stand trial. Despite this, defense lawyers advised Berkowitz to enter a plea of not guilty by reason of...
insanity!
But he refused. Berkowitz appeared calm in court on May 8th, 1978, as he pled guilty to all the shootings.
Damn.
At his sentencing 2 weeks later, Berkowitz caused an uproar when he attempted to jump out the window of the 7th floor courtroom.
Oh, shit.
Can you imagine? That blows my mind. Just in the middle of it all, you're going to try to jump out the window?
What a way to do it.
After he was restrained, he repeatedly chanted, "Stacy," the name of his last victim. "Stacy was a whore," he shouted. "I'd kill her again. I'd kill them all again."
Okay.
The court then ordered another psychiatric evaluation before sentencing could proceed. During the evaluation, Berkowitz drew a sketch of a jailed man surrounded by numerous walls, and at the bottom he wrote, "I am not well. Not well at all."
Obviously, dude. Of course you're not well. I hope you're not.
Nonetheless, Berkowitz was found competent to stand trial, and on June 12, 1978, Berkowitz was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison for each murder to be served consecutively.
Nice.
Holy crap.
He was ordered to serve time in the Attica Correctional Facility, which is a maximum security prison in upstate New York. And Berkowitz has later described his life in Attica as a nightmare, which, good, fuck you.
Yeah.
Despite prosecutors' objections, the terms of Berkowitz's plea agreement made him eligible for parole in 25 years.
No.
Whoa.
Oh, God.
In 1979, there was an attempt on Berkowitz's life in which the left side of his neck was slashed from the front to back resulting in a wound that required more than 50 stitches to close.
Holy hell.
Good. Nice.
Yeah, unfortunately he survives.
I know.
Wow.
That's the story today, apparently, is that the human body is so resilient.
The neck is the most resilient part of the
You're
human
right.
body.
This is what we've learned.
Berkowitz refused to identify his assailant and claimed he was grateful for the attack. He said it brought a sense of justice, or in his own words, the punishment he deserved.
What a weird man.
Now, get this shit. In 1987, Berkowitz became an evangelical Christian in prison.
I'm sorry, what now?
Yep, this jackass then went on to state that he no longer wishes to be referred to as the son of Sam. He wants to be known as the son of hope.
Oh, shut the fuck up, asshole.
I knew you guys were going to love that one. Oh, man. Soon after his imprisonment, Berkowitz invited Malachi Martin, an exorcist, to help him compose an autobiography. But Martin refused his offer.
Yeah, that sounds right to me.
Yeah. After rampant speculation about publishers offering Berkowitz large sums of money for his story, the New York State Legislature swiftly passed a new law that prevented convicted criminals and their relatives from making any financial profit from books, movies, or other enterprises related to their crimes. Which makes sense.
Nice.
Yeah. However, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down the so-called Son of Sam law for violating the First Amendment rights of free expression in 1991. But
they're right.
Right. But New York proposed a constitutionally revised version of the law the following year. Similar laws have since been enacted in 41 states and at the federal level. Because, yeah, they are free for, they have the right to free speech. However, you should not be profiting off crimes you've committed, especially when you've killed somebody.
Right. Like, you can write the book, but you can't profit off of it.
Right. Maybe the money goes to the victims. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Berkowitz is unfortunately entitled to a parole hearing every 2 years as mandated by state law. Though
I'm sure he just keeps getting shoved back in there.
Yeah. Well, why even bother?
Well, for the most part, he's refused to even ask for release, and he oftentimes doesn't even go to the hearings. However,
you never hear that.
However, at his 12th and most recent parole hearing in May of 2024, 70-year-old Berkowitz was, surprise, surprise, denied.
Yay!
Imagine my shock.
His next parole hearing is scheduled for May of 2026. So less than a year. Although I don't think he's ever going to get out, let's be honest.
No, it doesn't sound like he's even trying, so...
So one last thing to wrap this up. There is an interesting and compelling theory and argument that David Berkowitz did not act alone. I'm not going to dig deep into it here, but there is a good documentary series on Netflix called The Sons of Sam. And if anyone wants to learn more about this, I highly recommend watching it. There is a solid argument there, but I don't know what I truly think about the documentary itself.
Very interesting.
I will say, though, while there is some weight to it, I'm not 100% on board, but I will echo the statements made by others, and I repeat, the thought process here, what I'm about to say, is with the full understanding that eyewitness testimony is often not very reliable.
Right.
With that said, this is a quote from some people who have speculated about this at the time, which is, quote, "Why are there 3 suspect cars, 5 different suspect descriptions, different heights, different shapes, different sizes of the perpetrator," unquote.
Yeah.
It's a little weird, but the most important part of all this is there have been no related shootings after David Berkowitz was arrested. So that should tell you everything you need to know.
That is what I need to know, which is that if it was more people acting, they stopped.
Correct. And, who knows? Maybe there were other people. again, that documentary is interesting. I did watch it. I don't know how much I buy it. That's the only problem. There is a
Yeah, I mean, like
really
people can put on disguises. Like we were just talking about putting on wigs to hide from him. He could have put on wigs.
That's even funnier. I didn't even think of that. You're right. He's the one buying up all the blonde wigs.
Oh God, that would have been a
Yes, that's why there's
plot
no
twist.
stock. He has all the wigs.
That would be so funny.
When will you wear wigs?
All right, so with that wrapped up, Joyous, what did you think of the son of Sam?
He's a real strange creature. He sounds like this whole story sounds like a made up satanic panic story, which really is just good background information for the fact that okay, a lot of these made up stories were based in some truth, which was I feel an interesting thing because I look back at it and I'm just like, man, these people are fucking crazy. What's wrong with you? Um, but you
But
know
there
what?
it
They
was.
they
Yeah.
did have something to fear.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is he could have been so much smarter about it. You're walking around New York City late at night shooting people at random. You should never have gotten caught.
No,
Right.
he was brazen about it, and he thought he was better than everybody else, and figured
Yeah.
Well, it
he'd
came
never get caught.
yeah, it came down to a parking ticket.
Yeah,
Yeah.
For real.
You know, that's crazy to me. And so, yeah, in a city as big as New York, he should never have gotten caught. And yet, thankfully, he did. And we're not encouraging anyone to go out and do that. Just for the
No.
record.
Of course.
no.
But yeah, so how do you think this compares to other cases of FJIs? Like Bundy and Dahmer and Gacy and all those guys?
Well, so this one I've definitely never heard anything about, which is interesting. So I feel like this is definitely one of the less famous ones.
Which is interesting that you say that because you must not have watched Mindhunter, but they, in that show, which is based on real life FBI detectives who started up the whole serial killer thing, they actually interviewed David Berkowitz in prison. And that's shown on the TV show Mindhunters.
Mindhunter? Yeah, I've never seen that before.
It's so good. It's on Netflix. It's all based in reality. It's so good. The people they got to play all these people were perfect. The guy that got to play Charles Manson should be in a movie about Charles Manson.
Damn.
Yeah, it was so good. But I highly recommend it. Unfortunately, they did cancel it after, I think, 2 seasons. So, they never wrap up the BTK killer case, for example.
Gotcha.
But, as we've covered BTK, you were unimpressed. So,
Yeah, he wasn't my favorite.
no. But, yeah, it's funny that you had never heard of him because Son of Sam has been... It's weird. When I was a kid, granted, when I was a kid, he had been kind of caught recently and was on trial. But I remember people talking about it when I was little. So for me, like, this has always been there.
Yeah. But literally the only similar thing that I've ever heard before is I remember my dad used to go on this like Red Sox forum that was called Sons of Sam Horn. Sam Horn being like a famous baseball player.
That's funny. So
Dad, if you're listening, which I don't think you do, what's up with that?
That's really funny. And your dad definitely does not listen to this. He's not a fan of true crime.
I know.
I remember I got him to watch the beginning of a true crime documentary because within the first 7 minutes, something so freaking crazy happened that I ran into the other room when I saw him and I was like, you gotta watch this, you gotta watch this. And I made him watch it. He was so upset at me for making him watch it. So yeah, your dad's not a true crime guy.
No, he apologized. He apologized to me once. He was like, "I'm sorry you're making this thing and I'm not listening to it." I was like, "I'm not gonna make you, dude. It's fine."
Yeah. He's too happy-go-lucky for such dark stuff, so I don't blame him. I really don't.
It's true. It's true. We'll leave him to his baseball.
Yes. And his musical theater.
You know what? And I like my happy little musical theater corner too.
No, and I used to love doing it too, but he's tried getting me back in, but I just can't get back into it. I don't know why. Something's changed in me, so.
Something has changed within you.
On that note, thank you everyone for joining us. Once again, I am Janus Dead.
I'm Jameson Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.